I was in Washington, D.C. I was a member of Congress at the time, and Congress was scheduled to be in session that day. So I had gotten up early and had gone for a run. I had run down the mall, so I'd run close to the White House and then had run back to the Capitol and run around the Capitol. And so I was actually in the House gym at the time. And as I got there getting ready to take a shower, I noticed that a number of my colleagues were gathered around a television set. So I just walked over to see what was going on. And obviously that was when the first building had been hit, and so people didn't know what to make of it. I certainly didn't ascribe any nefarious motives to it at that time. But as soon as the second building was hit, which was only moments later, several of my colleagues said, well, this is obviously an attack. And we were glued to the TV for a little while, but then I thought, all right, we better figure out what happens next. So I got ready, went back to my office. I was sitting at the desk in my office, and my staff said that my sister was calling me from Milwaukee. And so I took the call from my sister, and she said, you better get out of there. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, they hit the Pentagon too. And I looked at my staff person, and I said, do you know anything about the Pentagon getting hit? And she said, no. So I got up from my desk and walked over and looked out the window toward the Pentagon, which is 2 or 3 miles away from the Capitol, and could see the smoke billowing out of the Capitol, out of the Pentagon. So that was how I knew the Pentagon had been hit, because my sister in Milwaukee had called to tell me the Pentagon had been hit. And it was just then seconds after that that the alarms started going off in the Capitol complex, and we were told to evacuate the complex. And we just all left. Everybody just scattered to the winds. I do remember leaving the building and walking down the street, and again, watching the smoke coming from the Pentagon and thinking, this is what it must feel like when you're in a city that's been attacked. Because I did think maybe we're at war. The Pentagon obviously had been hit. We had both of the Trade Center buildings hit. So it was without a doubt the most unsettling situation I've ever been in my life in terms of thinking, are we at war? Has America been attacked? The tragedy was, one of the people who worked in my office, his sister was on one of the planes that had come from Boston. So it was in one of the planes that had hit the Trade Center. So she was killed. She was engaged to be married and was killed. So it hit our small office staff pretty hard. It was the night of September 11th. A huge number of members of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, got together on the steps of the Capitol and gathered in solidarity. And it was perhaps the only time that I can remember that experiencing that as a member of Congress. And now you look at the partisan divides and think, man, if something like that happened, maybe they'd even gather at different places. But it was really reaffirming of the solidarity of Americans at that time, that we were all together. Well, in that situation, it did bring us together. It did bring us together. There's no question about that. And it was people that you probably had never talked to before, even though you were serving with them in the House of Representatives, but you were standing arm in arm and singing together. So that was a very moving event.